Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with Ghost Batgirl. A deadly explosion, missing bodies, and a seedy underworld of exploitation has combined the forces of Elisa Cameron and Cassandra Cain. At the center is the self-described benevolent criminal mastermind Malcolm Greymater, apparently able to restore life to the recent dead. One of his successful revivals tried to get revenge on his former boss, Two-Face, who is now fixated on this mysterious organization. The two heroines, meanwhile, lost their latest lead in the mystery to Greymater's deadly shapeshifter. Issue number 3's cover is a bit less than encouraging, with Greymater's henchwoman Towering Chris standing in front of a skylight while holding a heroine in each hand by either collar or cape. Someone's definitely been eating their Wheaties. We begin with Greymater removing bullets from Carver, likening the people he's revived to children with difficult lessons in limitations yet to learn. He asks the ex-coffin occupant what he was thinking, but he doesn't recall. "It's like my brain is, like it's got hair growing on it. My barber wanted to charge extra for brain surgery, and my surgeon wanted to charge extra for a haircut. Can you believe that?" He remembers his name, Ken Carver, but not his mother's, not that he knew that anyway, but Greymater isn't worried since the goon has the benefit of his most recent surgical implementations. That's when Trixie returns, confirming that she killed Nelson Potter, but she had a run-in with Ghost and a costumed associate, leading the Mad Doctor to think there needs to be a face-to-face meeting. Meanwhile, Two-Face is arriving in Arcadia, reading in a newspaper about how Kendall Fletcher was found alive and returned home. Freddy, one of the henchmen Dent hasn't shot yet, says she was the looker he followed at the Diamond Exchange, and how curious it is she survived the explosion. But enough about that, it's time for Harvey's medicine. One of Two-Face's goons happens to recognize a woman that was at the Diamond Exchange that allegedly died. Is this building up to something, or merely increasing Two-Face's curiosity about all the dead bodies running around all of a sudden? In the hotel room, working off some of Ghost's information, Barbara is trying to track down Trixie. And, geez, look at Cassie and Ghost. It looks like they're intentionally avoiding eye contact. Elisa with her hand on her hip, eyes to the side, a maskless Batgirl with her arms crossed and head tilted slightly upward. Did they have a nasty argument before the issue started? Anyway, Elisa says that Trixie and the Amazonian accomplice work on behalf of someone called the General, and they might be under some kind of mental conditioning. Maybe that would explain Shaquille O'Neal. Anyway, they're difficult to track, but that's not necessary, as B-Girl masks up just before Trixie and Chris crash through the window, looking to take Miss Cameron with them. Cass wastes no time taking on the scrappy but physically unthreatening Trixie, but Chris, Ghost describes, is over 6.5 feet tall and bulletproof. And I'm suddenly reminded of a country song. Did someone listen to Travis Tritt while writing this and just cut the height by 3.5 feet? Additionally, Chris is sporting gloves that can hit Elisa even when she's intangible, and hit she does. Batgirl intervenes, getting Chris in a headlock, only for Trixie to join in the dog pile and has one of her scalp snakes bite Cassie's cheek. When she falls, Ghost finally agrees to go with them. And they don't even have to threaten Barbara either. Harvey and his crew stop where they've tracked the bike that took Carver in the previous issue. When Greymater appears with his men, knowing Dent's name, Harv largely plays it cordial, but does throw in a warning for the Doctor to keep his men off his recruitment list. The General can't help it if his organization is more appealing, as echoed by Carver, who reminds his ex-boss that he shot him. Several times. Greymater asks what Harvey wants, if it'll ease the situation. "Give me Carver back! And if that's Augustine in the corner there, I want him back too!" Why? So if they sneeze weird or leave a faucet running, you can just shoot them again? That's terrible! But Harvey's still a better boss than someone I could name. Since Harvey invests so much time and money into his crew, he wants the two he killed back, or two others just like him, since they can apparently take a lot of punishment. So maybe my joke just now wasn't so far off. However, Greymater won't just give anyone over since they're still men, implying it'd be of their own choice. Dent leaves for now, but whispers to Freddy to have 6 dozen shooters brought in by dawn. Trixie informs the general that Ghost has been brought in, and he tells the modern-day Gorgon to keep tabs on the departing out-of-towners. And check out Carver. That's probably not the best sign. So Greymater finally meets Elisa Cameron for the first time, saying how much he admires her spirit, while also formally introducing himself and offering a rose. He's downright gentlemanly. Which, if going by the synopsis from the end of issue 2, seems to be pretty in character. Frankly, it makes him a very interesting villain. Ghost says she isn't one for chatting it up with slave traders that fake people's deaths and sell them into servitude, but the general clarifies the deaths were never faked. Rather, he gave those people a future by bringing them back to life.
Really? You know, I have this friend from DC Comics. I know what you're going to ask, and I've already looked into reviving the DC Cineverse, and, well, there are some things that even I can't bring back from the dead.
Barbara is treating Cass with a blood toxin kit, finding the poison could have killed someone twice her size, but she endures, likely due to her mysterious training. I guess there's nothing to suggest her dad didn't try building her resistance to poisons, though I don't remember it ever being brought up in her own comics, but hey, it's been a while. She wakes up and immediately heads out the window after Ghost, because forget keeping her circulation down. Across town, Freddy has called in 69 additional men for Two-Face, figuring the 2 of them and the Doctor made it an even 72 like he wanted.
Yeah, I figured the Doc might just start throwing antidepressants at them. You never know, some of our enemies might actually take some by accident. That'd help?
As Fred gathers the crew for a word from the boss, Harvey passes on another aspirin and begins his speech. It starts off by claiming their opponents insulted them and their intelligence, which I get that he's trying to rally them all behind him, but this isn't even an exaggeration. It's an outright lie of Zap Brannigan proportions. And this is a more mellow Harvey. He adds not to be fooled by familiar faces when the bullets start flying, as we close in on a yellow-eyed, mustachioed chap that's not really a chap, but moving on. This monologue is being transmitted to an earpiece worn by Chris, who, along with Carver, follow Ghost and Greymater, the latter of whom begins talking about how the catacombs they're walking in needed very little modification for his ever-growing empire. And how big is your empire? Not big enough.
I was this close to buying Marvel, then Disney swooped in from under my deformed nose.
The General is working towards a day when people are free from legal constraints of what he terms the occasional victimless crime, which Ghost doesn't believe exists because she includes those who die as a result of their own actions. They find some common ground in, for example, jailing someone who would sell weapons to kids, but violence cannot be cured, only its symptoms treated. Greymater even wants to eliminate the brute force politics that perpetuate dishonest commerce, that contribute to the violence, by using his own army that isn't afraid to die since, been there, done that.
I really like this exchange. While Greymater is more courteous and benevolent than most other villains, he is still a villain, though one with a unique motive and a rationale that is admittedly appealing. We'd love to get rid of the corruption in politics and the business people that legally profit off the suffering of others, though his Night of the Living henchman is still sketchy as all get out.
They enter a room containing the Engine, a device based on the technology he used a century back to extended his own life. A typo of Ralph Wiggum-like proportions, ladies and gentlemen. The machine preserves brain functions while the rest of the body is restored through modern medical techniques. Get a fresh enough corpse before too much cellular death, keep the brain alive, as it is the irreplaceable pilot of the human machine, and he's got another soldier for his army. Those that can't pull a trigger, like Kendall Fletcher, are sold off, because why not make a profit off unfortunate miscarriages? He restored her to life, which, if a crime, he suggests jailing doctors, and Greymater goes on to accuse Ghost of adding pain to the already bereaved Fletcher family, as she can no longer be the same person as before.
Note how, despite claiming to not want to further the burden of a grieving family, he still profited from selling a woman into slavery, one he admits is alive because he wanted to play God. Compartmentalization, folks. Well-intentioned villainy is still villainy.
The General has explained all this in the hope that he and Elisa can coexist, but since that isn't likely, he still needs her out of the way. Chris grabs her arm with her gloves, apparently giving her spider sense before knocking her out. He orders her taken to the box for a few hours, and at least 50 men ready for an upcoming battle. Carver asks, based on the General's explanation of his process, if his own brain is rotting, but is assured it just needs time to heal, especially for the looming conflict ahead. Meanwhile, sleazy talent agent Leo finds his office wrecked and calls disguised Trixie about it, figuring it was the two costume women that have confronted him prior. She, disguised as he, hangs up, infuriating Leo into heading down to see the General in person. And who should be watching but a silent young woman hanging in the shadows?
You sly little bat, you. Though, I have to say, she seemed to have lucked out here. There's a chance that Leo wouldn't have known where to find Greymater, or possibly too intimidated to go himself. The only alternative, though, would have been to confront him and make him tell her what she wanted to know, but with her limited speech capabilities, she might not be able to pronounce the right words.
Issue number 4's cover sees the heroines take on each other's adversary. Ghost apparently jumping out a window while phasing her hand into Dent's chest.
Elisa Cameron, superhero, crime fighter, amateur cardiologist.
She's woken up in a haze, due in part to the cage she's in emitting some kind of non-electrical energy that messes with her head too much for her to focus her powers. In front of her sits fellow dead man Carver, looking to compare notes. Despite whatever Greymater may have told him, she's not actually dead, and the General will sacrifice anyone to get what he wants. Chris interjects, praising her leader's ambition, and sends Carver upstairs. While the enemy muscle woman thinks Ghost simply refuses to admit she's wrong, it's more about the sacrilege of using the dead for his own gain. So, you're fighting for the rights of the dead now? Someone has to.
All she needs now is a lot of green to snag William Shatner for TV ads, and she's good to go.
At that moment at street level, roughly 80 feet above the prison, Leo is trying and failing to get an audience with Mr. G when Batgirl makes an appearance. Greymater's narration notes how she exceeds his expectations, even if the men she fights are working at half capacity, and even compliments the effective intimidation of her costume. Not sure how he's seeing all this, though. As she makes her way inside the facility, he ponders killing Batgirl just to use his machine to bring her back. Can you imagine how unstoppable she'd be then?
Well, near the end of her solo title, she did die and get brought back. And she wasn't so much unstoppable as pointlessly turned evil by editorial idiocy. Then later reinvented with more idiocy. Angry spork want machete justice!
Turns out Greymater was nearby, watching all this from the shadows, though that raises the question of how Cass missed him, but hey, she's not Daredevil. Leo wants out of this deal with the long-lived scientist, but the General assures him he has no reason to worry, and soon enough their partnership will be secretive once more, so long as he follows downstairs, where the pointy-eared ninja just descended. Two-Face has crashed his way through one of the garage doors, and his current right hand, Freddy, calls Carver out. We see the formerly dead goon saying this is a stupid move, and how much of a psycho Harvey is, while standing in front of an explosion? There's no real context for where Carver is or what's going on, and it feels very confusing. The disguised Trixie puts a gun to Fred's head, while Cassandra manages to find Ghost. Rather quickly when you think about it, since this is supposed to be 8 stories underground with pre-existing caverns. A little convenient even for Cassie. She instinctively wants to bust the glass wall, but is told to shut off the power first. Enter towering Chris, whom Ghost knows is quite formidable, but then again so is Batgirl.
Wow, not bad. I haven't had a broken nose in almost 10 years. How about you?
You merely adopted the broken nose, Chris. She was born in it, raised by it.
As bullets zip by, Trixie attempts to coax Fred to join their crew, incentivizing him by returning to her standard form, giving him a smooch, and making a run for it. She goes to Greymater, holding some manner of court with numerous associates, while the battle rages, and told of their falling numbers. Recalling a lesson in choreographed retreat from his time in the Civil War, yeah, seriously, he's that old, he instructs her on how to proceed, and to prepare the fireworks, while Leo and the others stay put until things are straightened out. Chris seems to have knocked out Batgirl while keeping Ghost from escaping through a wall. Cameron improvises by grabbing a feather pen from an inkwell in the other room and stabbing her foe with it.
Don't you get it? That trick don't work on me. My body just absorbs the stuff eventually.
What stuff? Are you talking about matter in general, or just quill pens? If it's the latter, that's a weirdly specific superpower.
As Cassie comes around, Ghost faces a book into Chris's head, incapacitating her, and the two make their exit.
I've heard of having your head in a book, but this is ridiculous. Ha-cha-cha-cha-cha.
Back at the shootout, Carver is still trying to convince Freddy to flip, noting how even other gangs consider Two-Face heartless. After he takes a couple shots, Fred dives to save him, though he is a walking corpse, so save might be a bit inaccurate. Harvey decides he no longer wants Carver back, given his lack of loyalty, but Freddy turns on him, choosing not to kill his old friend. So Dent shoots Fred and flips his coin for Carver. It comes up clean, so he leaves him there to rot, and on his way out finds his men being attacked by more traditional flesh-eating zombies. Elisa and Cass pass by overhead, but the young martial artist frees herself from her ally's grip to confront Dent. Meanwhile, Trixie's gone to tell her boss the Grants are loose, meaning the zombies, and the fireworks are lit, when she sees her sister's unique condition. After Greymater places something into a nodule in his neck, or removes it, kinda hard to tell, he insists that they leave without further concern to Ghost, while the book in Chris's head seems to glow gray.
As fairly disturbing as that image is, I bet Scrubs would have found a way to make it hilarious. JD diagnoses someone with encyclopedia brain tanica. Dr. Cox calls him a girl's name, while normally brilliant Elliot fumbles in otherwise calm social situations. And Dr. Cox calls JD another girl's name. Good times.
With the heroines kept busy by the zombies, Two-Face makes a getaway with the Doctor at the wheel, admitting he could have planned things better and maybe his ego got the better of him, like at the Diamond Exchange, so he asks for another aspirin. I swear, these things are about as effective as sugar pills. You feeding me placebos, Doc?
Or did I switch 'em with vitamin C caps when you weren't looking?
The Harvey Dent half was apparently so distracted by the Fletcher girl, the Two-Face half figured he was getting too hopeful, and might even have asked her out, so he bombed the exchange building.
And Two-Face figured the girl would say yes to the wanted criminal that frequents an insane asylum and has half of his face scarred over? I know he's kind of nuts, but if he's using some kind of rationale to think Harv had his eyes on a young woman and that might affect their delicate balance, then he'd have to know most women wouldn't be into him.
The gangster figures the Doc either wanted to atone for some previous medical misconduct, or possibly just be a hero by curing or suppressing a madman. Either one comes right out of left field, and he shoots him anyway.
He's your driver, you dope. This is exactly why I don't use Uber.
Fortunately, Ghost has already phased the Doctor and pulls him to safety, while Batgirl blocks the windshield briefly before the car crashes into a pole. Dent considers punching his own ticket as Cass pulls him out through the skylight, and Ghost leaves the Doc with her so as to go after the General. And that's when the base explodes. But he, his henchwomen, and the engine are in a van ready to head out of town. So investigating authorities will believe they and their equipment were all destroyed, along with their cannon fodder and associates. And so the story closes with the trio heading somewhere to renew their operations with greater discretion. I hear Metropolis is nice this time of year.
And that was Ghost Batgirl. And it was overall pretty good.
The art had its share of hiccups, like an apparent confusion over Cassie's ethnicity, how many legs a spider should have, and some angles or expressions being done awkwardly. I don't think someone being interrogated should look more tired than scared. But those instances aside, it was still well drawn and had some nice touches, like the details on Harvey's scarring. I liked that the story had a kind of modest, down-to-earth feel to it, even when things went all fringe science fiction. It may have left a couple things out, but otherwise it was well-paced and omissions felt largely minor.
Though certain additions at the last minute bordered on the convenient, like Two-Face's doctor's heretofore unmentioned occupational disgrace, leading him to attempt to improve the criminal's disposition. I get wanting to give him some kind of rationale, some kind of backstory, but he was a minor character, and he got as much focus as he really needed. Though, given the results his treatment had, when you look at the whole story, it feels like his motives should have been clarified earlier, maybe peppered throughout the first couple of issues, not the last couple of pages.
Same goes for the camaraderie amongst Two-Face's crew. Them fearing for their safety when he snaps at a spilled drink is one thing, but it was never really established that they were particularly close as associates in crime, that they'd risk their own lives for each other. Most henchmen to supervillain types tend to be in it for the money, and that's it. Not necessarily heartless, but not exactly selfless either. Some of these Dark Horse characters, however, get very little described about them as well. Normally, there'll be a descriptive caption, real names, secret identities, modus operandi, that sort of thing. Here, much of the story felt a little like going in blind as a... well, you know. But in the end, the origins of Towering Chris or Trixie weren't all that pivotal to the plot, and the humbling nature of Malcolm Greymater was pretty well described in his mannerisms with his patients and his discussion with Ghost about the root causes of societal ills. It's one of the better examples of a villain with understandable, borderline noble intentions, but the book doesn't let you forget that he's still the bad guy. And in a possibly similar fashion, when we first see Two-Face in this story, he's laid back, he's having fun. Sure, he just blew up a building and killed a bunch of people, but he's having a friendly card game with his crew, and the entire time, you just see the Harvey Dent half. And when they finally show his scarred half, it's when he's killing someone over an innocent accident. And given the horrified reaction everyone gives, except for the drunken Carver, it feels like this is probably not the first time. It's not a visual maneuver I remember seeing very often in Two-Face stories, and I think it was a really smart choice.
Perhaps echoing the obscurity of these two characters being thrown into battle together, there were some atypical elements at work here.
Most crossovers, which features characters meeting for the first time, perhaps being uneasy or untrusting to some degree, then end with the heroes shaking hands, parting ways, or settling back into their usual routines. This one sees trust established rather quickly, which I can kind of see from Cassie's end, but Elisa Cameron seemed rather quick to trust them despite some misgivings, and I don't know if that's in character because, again, I've never read her books. Then it ends rather abruptly, teasing a Superman Ghost crossover that never happened, and I'm not even sure it was ever planned from what I've searched. And the General's army and associates, all gone. Couple that with the fact this is the first time Ghost has met Greymater, these are things that affect the ongoing continuity in the Dark Horse universe, and that's something else most crossovers don't do. At least where Elisa Cameron's adventures are concerned, this story doesn't seem so self-contained. The ending did feel sudden, but I guess I can't really think of much else the heroines could have done, either in terms of the case or on a personal level. Saying goodbye, walking off into the sunset, yada yada yada.
If you like Cassie in her early days, not the rehashed early days mandated by post-Flashpoint stupidity, and don't mind sampling the waters of another comic company's character, I give this a recommendation. It's not epic, but still a fun read. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.